Hi, today we're going to talk about key signatures and how in an exam situation you would work out what key a piece of music is and how you can do that through listening and also using notation. Okay, so before we talk about key signatures, we need to take a step back and look at what makes a piece of music. So if I was to write a piece of music, I would first have to choose what's called a tonality. Now that tonality is based on a scale. Now we use this word scale a lot in the English language to refer to weighing ingredients or on fish. But in a musical sense, a scale is basically a series of notes. And there are lots of different types of scales. And for this particular exercise, we're going to look at major and minor scales. Now here we have a G major scale. Now, as you can see, the first note is G, hence the title of the G major scale. Now a G major scale actually has an F sharp in it. So what that tells me, if I was to choose to write a piece of music in G major, that every F that I came across would have an F sharp, would be an F sharp instead. Now this is a piece of music by Bach called Air on a G string, very famous classical piece. And when Bach went to write this piece of music, he would have had to stick to the notes for this scale for it to be in G major. Now, there are different ways of finding out what key a piece of music is in. Now we can do that orally by listening to it and trying to figure out whether we think it has a positive or negative sound, as you've looked at in Key Stage 3. But you can also do it by looking at the musical notation. So here we have two separate key signatures, one which feature sharps and one which features flats. Now in both examples you will notice that the key signature is right at the beginning. In this particular example we've also got the time signature, and you'll see it's just before the time signature, which tells us how many beats in a bar. Now you can never have sharps and flats in the same key signature. You will either have one or the other. Now this particular piece of music here is in D major, and this particular piece of music is in E flat major, and there are certain rules we can use to find out what key they could possibly be in. Okay, so unfortunately that's not as simple as it gets, because all key signatures have a major and a minor friendship. So this key signature here represents G major, which has the one sharp that we were talking about earlier on the F line, so the F sharp. But this also could be E minor. And there are various different ways of finding out and telling which one is which. So what we're going to look at first, the first stage, is to find out what the major key signature is. Now I've told you that this is G major because it has one F sharp, but how do you know that? So there are a couple of rules, a couple of tricks that you can look at to help you do that. So the first of which is if there are sharps in the piece of music. So if there are sharps, what you need to do is take a look at the very last sharp. So here we have three separate sharps, F sharp, C sharp and G sharp. And all you need to do is go up one note or one semitone. So my last sharp is G sharp. If I go up one semitone from G sharp, I land on A. Now that tells me, if we are taking it for granted that this is in a major key signature, that my piece of music is in A major. So we have another example here. This is a sonata by Haydn. And you'll notice in the music there are no additional sharps and flats throughout here, because at the beginning, as we said earlier, the key signature tells me that all the way through this piece of music I must play G sharp instead of G, C sharp instead of C, and F sharp instead of F. Okay, so here we have key signatures with flats, and equally there is a similar trick to help us figure out what the major key could be. So you will notice there are 5 flats up here in this key signature. Now this is in D flat major, and the very simple way of doing this is to take off 1 flat, so minus 1 flat. So if I go to my last flat, which is G flat here, if I take that one off, my second or penultimate flat, second to last flat, is D flat here, and that is actually the key signature that we are in. Now we've got another piece down here by Chopin in D flat major. And again, notice within the music there are no additional flats everywhere, because can you imagine if I had to write that flat every time, make the music look really messy? So we just put it at the beginning so we can see what key signature we are in. Now I've worked out the major possibility. Remember, it's a possibility. Might not definitely be in the major. I also have to work out the relative minor. Now, don't be put off by the word relative. It just means relationship. So they share a key signature, and every major key has a minor partner. Now, the way of doing that is to go down 3 semitones from my starting note. So if I'm in C major, which is here, and I want to find out what my relative minor friendship partner is, I will count down to the left 3 semitones. 1, 2, 3. And I land on A. Now, as you can see down here in this table, C major and A minor have a relative relationship. Let's take another one, for example. Let's have a look at F major. So I find the F on my keyboard. I count down 3 semitones. 1, 2, 3, and I land on D minor. So let's try this example here. We've talked about how to find the sharps, so I take the last sharp and I go up 1 note. So if I did that on the keyboard, there's my last sharp, G sharp, going up 1 note, I land on A. So this is in an A major key signature, or it could be in a minor key signature. So again, if I use my keyboard to help me out, I'm in A major. If I count down 3 semitones, 1, 2, 3, I land on F sharp. So it's F sharp minor. Right, so that's all very well and good, I hear you say. I've got a key signature and you're telling me it could be 2 possible options. So I'm in an exam, it's worth 3 marks. How am I supposed to know which one it is? Well, there's lots of different ways of doing it. The first thing you have to rely on is your ears. You need to listen to that piece of music. That is your biggest clue. They will always play you the music in your exam. So listen to it. Does it sound negative, angry, depressed, sad? If it does, then it's in a minor key. If it sounds positive, maybe calm, happy, joyful, then it's very probably in a major key. So that's the first thing I want you to try and think of. So let's have a listen to this. This is 2 versions of Have Yourself a Merry Little Christmas, one of which is major and one of which is minor. I wonder if you can tell the difference. So this is number 1.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be light.
Okay, and now have a listen to number 2.
Have yourself a merry little Christmas. Let your heart be light. From now on, your troubles will be out of sight.
So I wonder if you got them correct. The first one was our major, our original key signature, and our second piece had been transposed into the minor. Now, some of us find that quite difficult to do when we're listening, and some pieces are harder than others to identify, particularly when it comes to the different things that can change, like the speed and the dynamics sometimes throw us a little bit. So there are other ways. But the other ways involve looking at the music. Now, in minor key signatures, we also have what's called a raised seventh note. And what that means is, although my key signature at the beginning is the same, so this could be C major because there's no sharps or flats, or the relative minor, which is A minor. Now, I've listened to it and I'm not sure which one it is by hearing it. So then I can have a look within the music for extra accidentals. So if you have a look through here, you will notice that every G has been sharpened. There is a small sharp sign just before all the G's in this piece of music. Now that is the raised seventh. So I've put in the scale down here for you. If I count 7 notes, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. If I raise a G, I raise it to a G sharp. So what that has done, it's called the melodic minor. I have included an extra accidental. So if you're looking at a key signature and you've got the whole piece of music and you're still unsure, but you can see dotted around the odd accidental, then it may suggest to you that it's in the minor. So what you need to do is think, well, what could that minor be? And then check, is that minor the raised seventh? If it is, then it'll give you a definite clue that you are in a minor key. Okay, let's have a quick listen to this piece by Bach. Okay, I've got one other thing that I could do. Now, this will not always work, but sometimes it does. We could look at the first and the last note of the music. So in this particular example, I'm faced with one sharp, F sharp. Now, F sharp, we know, if we go up one note, lands us on G major. But my relative is E minor, so how do I know the difference? Again, I can look for the extra accidental, so you'll notice one just here. But also I can look at the first and the last note. Now if you look here, my first note is an E and my last note is an E. Now obviously this one's a little bit easy because we've got chord symbols at the top and the E minor symbol is there, plain and obvious for us. But that will not always happen for you. So that is another way that you can have a look, and we'll listen to this, to find out whether it's in a minor or major key, if you can't tell by listening to it.
Scarborough Fair. Parsley, sage, rosemary, and thyme.
Okay, so we've nearly come to the end, but there's a couple of things that we have to remember. Now, our rules for our sharps and our flats will only get us so far, and unfortunately, they don't apply for 2 key signatures, and they are C major and F major. So if you think about our rule for our sharps, there are no sharps in this key signature for us to go up from. So there is no way of us telling from what we've got given what key we are in. So if there is no sharps and no flats, you need to remember that you are in C major or possibly A minor, but you have to remember this. The other one is F major. Again, so if you think about the rule for the flats, what we do is we take off the last flat. Well, if we took off that flat, that B flat, we wouldn't have any flats left to count. So we have to remember this one as well. Okay, 2 that we have to remember, C major and F major. Okay, so there's one last thing that we need to remember, and that is the order of our sharps and flats. They will always be written in a certain way. And there is a poem that we can use to remember these sharps and flats. So if I draw us a quick treble clef. Now, our poem is Father, Notice I've drawn my sharp on the F line. Charles. Notice the middle of the sharp is in a space. Goes down and ends battle. Okay, I'll say that again for you. Father Charles goes down and ends battle. And every time I have sharps, they will always be written in that order. Now, if you're ever asked to write a sharp, and I say write an F sharp, then you need to make sure the box in which the sharp centres around is either on the line or in the space. Can you notice in each of these, they are very definitely the centre of it either crosses a line or is in a space. And that tells us which space or line we're trying to hit. Father Charles goes down and ends battle. Okay, so the order of the flats is just as simple. So here's my quick stave and treble clef. Same poem, Father Charles goes down and ends battle, but I just do it backwards for my order of the flats. So battle, ends, and down goes Charles, father. Again, with the flat, it's the space that is important. So the space here goes through the line, so that is an F flat. This one here goes through the middle of the space. There's no line going through there. That is an E flat. So I'll say it for you one more time. Battle, ends, and down goes Charles, father. Okay, that about covers everything you need to know. If you're still unsure, then you can find lots of different examples and things that you can do on glanavonmusic.com. So it's www.glanavonmusic.com. If you go to the GCSE tab, you'll notice there is a major and minor and an instrumental training, and that will take you through to a hub resource where you can practice listening to major and minor music. Now, obviously, we'll do more of this in class, but if you have any questions, then please come and see me.